Welcome back to another episode of the Bleav in Georgia Tech podcast. We are your co-hosts. This is Jackson Caudill. That is RJ Schaefer. RJ, you are back. And like I'll have to say this, any future recruiting episodes we do, you're not allowed to come on here because RJ wasn't on there last week, and then Georgia Tech rallies off just 6 straight commits. So I guess it's safe to say, RJ, you might be banned from future recruiting episodes.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of luck because the one episode that I miss, we go out and we get like 8 recruits in a week. So, I'm not superstitious, but maybe we got to keep the streak going.
Not superstitious, but you might be a little stitious, right?
Yeah.
We are happy to be here with you Wednesday, June 12th, coming to you for another big weekend of official visits. We're definitely going to talk recruiting. It's again, we've said this for the past couple episodes, but right now is kind of the quiet time in college athletics, even especially for Georgia Tech. Like the loss to Georgia, ended the athletics calendar for them. Like there's not going to be anything going for a little bit. So we got to find some stuff to talk about. And there is still things to talk about. We've got some Drew Burress, every time I walk away to go right, he gets an award for something. We had another line released for a football game this year. We got preseason magazines coming out, preseason all ACC teams, people projecting. So we're going to get into all that. But obviously, we haven't talked since the recruiting weekend. And a lot of the damage I think all the damage was done on Sunday. It just started rolling in one after another. And every time I thought I could put the computer away and go to sleep, boom, another commitment. It started with a 3-star athlete, Jamari Bryce. I think he's going to end up playing receiver. He started things off on Sunday. 3-star safety, Phoenix Felton, committed afterwards. 3-star offensive lineman, Kevin P. committed. 3-star tight end, Connor Roosh committed. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, by the way. Then we had 4-star cornerback Dallin Pinson. That was a huge commit. Notre Dame was in the mix there. Kentucky was in the mix. I know he had a crystal ball to Kentucky at one point, either in the last month of the process or so. Got him, and then 3-star wide receiver Sam Turner also committed. And I said it on last week's episode, and I shared the clip on social media. Like I really like Sam Turner. I think that's a really, really underrated pickup in the state of Georgia. So look, I love all these commits. And it got Georgia Tech up to, at the time, they were up to number 22 in the 247 Sports recruiter rankings. That's the personal recruiting rankings. Like I go off of. I know a lot. Like Rivals is good too. Like if you want to use Rivals. Just for like future reference. That's the one I reference the most. You can also use On3 if that's the one you ride with. But it was a great weekend. I don't think you can really spin it in any other way. Getting some players. I don't. It's hard for any recruit for you to foresee at this moment in time being like, oh, this dude's going to step in right away and play. Because generally you don't want freshmen coming in and dominating playing time. Like you just don't. Like, yes, you have your Eric Singletons. You have other guys like Ethan McKinney started several games at left tackle, but that's generally not your plan. You want to be a veteran-led team, which you can do now a lot easier in the transfer portal era. But I do, it is tough to project where guys will be, especially, your senior year in high school is really huge for you. Like, a lot, and these guys still have to go through that. But again, really like all these pickups. What were your thoughts on the big day on Sunday?
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised on how many wide receivers committed because we have talked about the Georgia Tech wide receiver room being, very solid and a very deep room. And you landed 2 guys who will make an impact at some point because the room is so, not bloated, but, full right now. I don't know if they'll make an immediate impact. And kind of what you were talking about, you kind of don't want freshmen to come in and always be a day one starter. But I think you picked up a ton of guys who will help Georgia Tech down the road, and even some guys who will help Georgia Tech right now. Like I think Dalen Penson, I think he can come in and get rotational, if not starting minutes for Georgia Tech. So just a lot of various positions that did need help, and some positions who we were already stacked on, and now you got 2 more 3-star prospects there.
Yeah, and the thing is, Eric Singleton's going to be back next year. Like he's just going into sophomore year. Malik Rutherford, Christian Leary not guaranteed to be on here next year. Abdul is not guaranteed, or he's not going to be on here. Like his is his redshirt senior season. Leo Blackburn will be a redshirt junior, I believe, going into next year. He could have one more year of eligibility, depending on what he wants to do after the season. But yeah, like, and it's not to the same thing. Like, and I know people will just laugh at me for even saying this on the face, but like, if you want to know how to do wide receiver recruiting the right way, it's Ohio State, where it doesn't matter that you have Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. You're going and getting more and more talent. If you think these guys are really talented, you're just going to keep bringing it. Like
Yeah.
you need a variety of playmakers at the position, and we both think that this Georgia Tech wide receiver room is already underrated as it is, and it doesn't get talked about enough. And I know that they don't have the same wide receiver rooms as Ohio State. Like, don't take that out of context. I'm just saying you need to follow that model. And is if you think these guys can be playmakers, you need to get as many as you can. You don't need to say, "Hey, we've already got a few receivers. We got some last year. Like this is a cutoff line." No, if a talented receiver or anything wants to come play for you, like you have to let them in. And now Tech has a quarterback recruit, Grady Adamson. I know he was on campus over the weekend. He's been committed for a couple months now. You have a running back in J.P. Powell. He committed last week. Now you have some receivers. You have a tight end. You got 3 offensive linemen. So the offense is being recruited well now. I think there's going to be a lot more defense. Like you've got some players in the secondary. We talked about Rashawn Dinkins last week. You got Dalen Pinson's a really good cornerback, and we have Andre Fuller at the edge position. I think you're going to see a lot more defense over the next few weeks potentially. Not that there's not going to be any more offensive players, but obviously, the defense is kind of under the microscope right now for Georgia Tech, especially after their performance last year, and just getting more bodies and improving on that side of the ball is going to be paramount. So, I guess I wanted to touch on the recruiting rankings a little bit because I have like 2 ways of seeing this. I think it was huge that they jumped like 20 something spots all the way up there. Now it's going to be okay, where do they finish? Because recruiting is a long and patient game. And I was, I talked to Najee about this, last week. Like, I think a lot of people, especially at this time of year, if their team or their favorite team doesn't have as many recruits as they want to, and they see like a 40 or a 50 beside their name in the recruiting rankings, they freak out. But there also has to be something where a lot of these teams, like Syracuse and Wake Forest, and some of these teams being higher up in the recruiting rankings, is probably not going to last. Like these guys load up on commitments early. They really get boosted up. And then, I can guarantee you Florida State is not finishing 15th in the ACC in recruiting. It's just not going to happen. Miami is not going to finish lower than 3rd in the recruiting rankings. It's not going to happen. I think it's going to be interesting to see if Georgia Tech can stay up there and if they can get enough higher quality players to maintain a top 30 class, because I think that's a reasonable thing to shoot for every year, is getting a top 30 to top 25 class. They're not going to get enough 4 or 5 star players to really jump into the top 10 or 15. I don't think. Like, I can be proven wrong on that for sure, but I think landing a top 30 to top 25 class would be really good. And I think we're going to have to see, because, they were on 20, they were at 22 after the weekend. A couple of schools have jumped them now, getting up to 25. We'll see what this weekend brings. But what are your expectations for where you want to see them end up, when all is said and done in December, when it really counts?
Yeah, I kind of want to point out that it is a marathon. Recruiting is. It's not a sprint. And having a good weekend like this is huge. But I kind of want to see, a decent amount of consistency. It doesn't have to be huge, but signing some more guys, especially in-state guys. There's a lot of receivers that, Georgia Tech is still very interested in. Some I saw a crystal ball earlier this week. I forgot who it was. Um, but maybe, more defense, more linebackers, more defensive line. There was a stat I saw earlier today, and this is offensive line and defensive line, but Georgia Tech has more former linemen on its staff than any school in the country, which I thought is interesting. And I feel like that gives you a very big advantage in recruiting because, like the stat says, you have 13 former linemen on the staff. And About half of those are defensive linemen. So I feel like you give yourself a big advantage in recruiting, but kind of big picture, you, I just want to see more guys coming in no matter what position they play because there is not one single position on this team where you feel like you couldn't benefit from, you know, talent anywhere because talent at a position where you already have talent is still going to be talent. It's not going to be overshadowed. It's not going to be, something you look down upon. If you can get a good player, you're going to get a good player.
Yep. And that, again, that's not at all to say you shouldn't celebrate being up there at this point in time, but
Yeah.
just know like there's still a long way to go. Like what matters at the end of the day is being there in December. And look, they only have 12 commitments. Like it's not like like when I talk about other programs, like Wake Forest has like nearly 20 commitments. Syracuse has nearly 20 commitments. Tech has half that and has a higher average recruiting rank. Like they have higher quality players by that metric. Like they have, I think I tweeted this out. I think it was on Monday. Like they're only behind in terms of average ranking. Like Florida State, like while Florida State is down there like 15th because they only have 5 commitments, their average recruiting rank is like 93. Like they have 4 stars and a 5-star. Like they have a really solid class, and they're just starting. Like they're going to be up there in the end. Clemson has a really high average rank. Miami does as well. And just barely in front of Georgia Tech was SMU in North Carolina. And I mean, just barely. Like, it's reasonable that Tech could finish 4th if they close on some guys well. And I know the guy everybody has in mind is 5-star offensive tackle Josh Petty. They're right in the mix for that. We'll see where it ends up at the end of the day. But that would obviously do a huge boost as well. So while it is good that they're right around that top 25 line now, let's see how things are November, December. You don't win recruiting titles in June. Like nobody does that. But you should also celebrate when your team gets some high quality guys, which I do think they did. Like these are good players. I just want to see where it ends up. Like that. That's always the thing. Because they jumped. They had a big rush of commitments last summer. Didn't finish in the top 25. Could they this year? Sure. I just want to be able to see it too. Anything else on recruiting?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Just some small talk here. Well, I guess I want to get to this first. Like Drew Burress, he was named to the freshman All-American team. He's named to the All-American team. He was named the freshman hitter of the year. He was one of the best players in the country as a freshman. I just run out of things to say about him at a certain point. Whether it was the 4 home run game against Georgia State. He had a good showing in the NCAA tournament. He had home runs against UNC Wilmington and Army. Played a pretty good game. He had that base running and mistake against Georgia, but that compared to his whole tournament performance, he was really good. Just like one of the best freshman seasons that Georgia Tech has seen in any sport. Like he was just fantastic all year.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to note, he was the only freshman that was on the All-American team.
Mm-hmm.
Like the amount of production that we saw from Drew Burress this year, I don't think you saw from any other freshman hitter or pitcher across the country. I mean, he is like, and I don't say this very often, he is almost like superhuman when he comes to the plate. He didn't end where he wanted to end in home run rankings, but earlier in the season, he was number 1 in home runs in the country for a very long time. And he's a guy that can, be not a legend, but, well, I feel like he could be a Georgia Tech legend. And I've seen mock drafts where, he goes 1, 2, 3. He's just one of the best athletes that Georgia Tech baseball has seen in a very long time.
And that's the thing, you got him for 2 more years. Like,
yeah.
When you go to college, you got to play for 3 years. So I have seen the same thing. Like I think he would, I guess, be the way too early favorite for the number 1 pick in 2026. Like I know MLB draft is not exactly a popular thing, but it's something to look forward to. Like Tech could have a potential number 1 pick down the line. Just a fantastic season all around. Obviously, big expectations for next year as well. So we'll see what that brings. Speaking of lists, Preseason lists are starting to roll out. Phil Steele is like, I love reading his magazine every year. Like, if you're a college football fan, I'm sure you read it too. Like, it's just one of the most comprehensive and best guides out there to read about teams for the season. So like, everybody out there should be reading it. So 5 players off Georgia Tech were named to his all ACC teams. Eric Singleton Jr. was the highest one he was the second team selection. Haynes King, Jamal Haynes, Jordan Williams all made the 3rd team, and Aiden Burr made the 4th team. Honestly, I forgot he did a 4th team because only 3 teams actually wind up coming out. But look, I think all those guys could end up like 1st or 2nd team all ACC. Like, we've had the debate on if Haynes King could be the top QB coming into the conference this year. Look, I don't want to have that debate right now, but that could be something we talk about later. We both think Jamal Haynes and Eric Singleton are going to have huge seasons upcoming. Jordan Williams is a part of one of the best offensive lines in the ACC. Zeke is going to be kind of the anchor in the middle of that defense. So I think he could definitely make an all. He was honorable mention last year. Aiden Burr, I think people kind of forget how good he was coming in there. I think he only missed one. He wound up missing like 1 field goal. He was like 17 of 18 after he took over for Gavin Stewart, and he hit a 62-yarder in the spring game. So like, he could have a really big season. And there's some other guys I think that weren't mentioned that could obviously be there too. Like, I think Weston Franklin and Joe Fusile in the middle of the offensive line. I definitely think LaMiles Brooks and Clayton Powley and Amari Harvey are all contenders in the secondary. I think Kyle Eford is one at linebacker. Look, this is a very talented team that's going to face a tough schedule, but like, there's a chance that Tech could land several players on all ACC lists when the season's over.
Yeah, and I kind of thought that, there were some guys who were a lot lower than I would have expected. Like, I think Jordan Williams, and you touched on this, like, I think Jordan Williams can be 1st team by the end of the year. I mean, really, there's a lot of guys on the offensive line who I think could end in a very high position for all ACC. But kind of looking at this generally, I mean, you have pretty much, out of all of these guys, like, they're all pretty much offense. And I think that goes to show, how high the expectation is for the offense this year, because you have Haynes King, who had a good year last year. You can say what you want about the turnovers. I mean, he was still solid. Jamal Haynes, who might be sneakily a lot faster than he was last year. Eric Singleton, who's one of the best athletes on the team. Aiden Burr, who, like you said, 62-yarder in the spring game. I'm still going to count that as an official stat. I don't care. It's in the spring game. But yeah, I think this really goes to show, Georgia Tech can have, a very top tier ACC offense. And I think, that's the one thing to come away with.
Yep. Look, there's always a lot of discourse that's going to be around these ACC teams, but I do think like this team has a chance to get a lot of guys on there this year. So we'll see how it ends up. Last topic for today, and it's going to be a brief one, but we've talked about some of the lines for Tech's games being released. We've had the Florida State one has been out for a little bit. Georgia State got released. When I was taking a peek at the odds, I generally just take a look over there to see if they posted any new ones, and I saw that they had one for Georgia Tech and Notre Dame. Me and RJ texted back and forth right after I wrote something up on it. Like, the line was at 13.5. That was actually a little smaller than what I expected, because Notre Dame carries a lot of preseason expectations this year. Look, I don't want to do a full Notre Dame breakdown right here, but I thought it being only 13.5, I did think was kind of interesting. Like, what did you think about it?
Yeah, and we did talk about this earlier, but I think that's – I don't want to underestimate Georgia Tech, but I feel like that's a lot smaller of a spread than I thought it was going to be. You mentioned 17, 18 points is what you thought. I was kind of thinking more like 3 touchdowns.
I thought the biggest spread of the year will be against Georgia. Like, everybody knows that. That will probably be in the 24 to 25 range if I had to guess. And again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful either. Like, I stick up for Georgia Tech a lot more when these lines are released. I just thought it was going to be like 17 or 18, just because like Notre Dame is supposed to be a really strong team this year. Like, they're going on the road to College Station to Texas A&M, and they're favored by a point. So like that shows you how good some people think Notre Dame could be. And it's neutral site. So, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, and they're a team who's expected to be in the 12-team playoff, and they're a team who has
if they're not, like, Marcus Freeman might be in trouble because take a look at Notre Dame's had some tough schedules over the years. Like a couple of years ago, they had to play Ohio State. They had to play some others as well. Like Tech is like low key one of their toughest games of the year. Like Texas A&M's a tough game for them. I have zero clue what USC is going to look like this year. Like they're a complete mystery to me. They could be good. They could be bad. I don't know. They do play Florida State. That's a home game. Like they don't have to go to Tallahassee. That's kind of it. Like they did play Louisville, and Louisville did stomp them out last year. But again, the game's at home. Like they don't play hardly any challenging road games.
I mean, you could realistically look at them going 10-2, 11-1 to end the season, and that not be ridiculous.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. So look, again, I don't want to just do a full breakdown of a game that's going to be played almost 4 months to the day right now, and just because the thing is the line could change. It could get smaller. Like if Tech comes out and starts out well, and Notre Dame kind of looks a little shaky out of the gates, we could see this line get under double digits. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
It could also, if Tech stumbles a little bit out of the gates, we could be vindicated on this line being a little small. But I think that's going to be just a fascinating game too. Like I'm really curious about how both teams look going in. So we'll talk a lot. That game will be a huge discussion point here in the next few months. But as always, that is going to, or I should say, if you're watching this on YouTube, we would love if you could subscribe to us, give us a like on the video. We are near 200 subscribers. I know everybody is going to want to fight. They're going to want to punch each other to be that 200 subscriber. Look, if you you need to do it. Like if you want to, we're keeping count on this. I hope we maybe can be at over 200 subscribers by the time we meet back up again next week. But we really love all the support out there that we get. We thank you guys a lot that watch. It means a lot to us. Like I said, if you wouldn't mind leaving a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. If you listen on podcast form, same thing. Follow the show. Leave us a review. If you think we're doing a terrible job, be sure to leave us a 1-star review. We can only get better that way. But if you think we're doing a great job, leave us a 5-star review. We would appreciate it, and we love doing this for you guys. So hopefully there should still be plenty to talk about next week. I know it's the dog days of summer. Everybody's on vacation. We're just kind of quietly waiting for football season to get going. But I promise you it's going to get here soon. But that is RJ Schaefer, and I'm Jackson Caldwell, and this has been another episode of the Bleav in Georgia Tech podcast.